This is Ego Death. A little dragon thought before I start. So this is a Chinese proverb that I heard this morning, which is really cool. When the wrong man uses the right means, when the wrong man or woman uses the right means work in the wrong way. I thought that was really cool. And that kind of falls under the pretense that, you can do all the right things, say all the right things to the wrong person and it won't work out. You could do all the wrong things with the wrong person or the wrong situation and it will, or with the right person or right situation and it'll work out. So I love that. That's a great place to be, where you release from trying to control outcomes and you just, exist and just do the best that you can and have some fun. So that's part of ego death as well. So ego death, defined as the often instantaneous realization that you are not truly the things that you've identified with. And the ego or sense of self that you've created in your mind is a fabrication. I believe that. And what's cool about that is if you recognize that, that means that you can fabricate anything. So that's what I'm talking about when I refer to this idea of becoming the dominant creator of your life. You can fabricate the creation and perception of what's going on for the good or the bad, right? So that's what ego is doing, is I'm positioning that there's a decent chance that your ego is functioning based on the concepts that it's been taught, and it might be getting you in trouble. So when I traveled to the Amazon to sit with plant medicine, I learned that the ayahuasca plant, this is one of the coolest things that I learned. What's up, people coming in on Instagram? So when I sat with the plant medicine, I learned that the ayahuasca plant is known as the death plant. That's not something fun to hear before you do it. So what they went on to say is that it doesn't mean that it kills you, but it kills the version of you that is no longer you, that is no longer necessary, the version of you that no longer applies. And that would be your ego. So that's when I first really started thinking and learning about ego death, when I started writing about it. So what's interesting about you and I is we've developed a system of interpreting the world that's too simple. Our system of interpretation and perceiving the world is too simple to do so effectively because the world is unexplainable for the most part. So this gives rise to opinions, right? That's a dangerous thing when we have opinions and assumptions, which represent our best attempt to explain the unexplainable. That's what we do. So give yourself a break, right? It's okay to do that. This might sound confusing, but what I was thinking the other day when it comes to our perception of reality is this: it's not what we think. What we think is just a collection of a few thoughts that we've grasped out of our 40 to 60,000 to make our best attempt at explaining reality at any given time. So when I say it's not what you think, I'm referring to the fact that thoughts are actually not things. And I was taught that thoughts are things. Thoughts are only things when you make them things. They're ideas about ourselves that only become things when we bring them forth and place value on them. If you can grab control of that perception right there, or acknowledgement that that's going on, that whatever you think is just based on the value that you put towards what you think. If you can release from that, that's the value of sitting with plant medicine. That's the value of meditation. It's just releasing from the need to think and the need to figure things out. That's what we're talking about here. So as humans, we misinterpret our existence in the world as our personality and our ego. Sometimes we don't recognize it because it's happening automatically and unconsciously, but our personality and our ego very often get misinterpreted as reality. Right? Our personality. So our thought and idea of ourselves is what I'm talking about. It means that what I think and understand is a big act, but not necessarily really me. What I think and understand is a big act, but not necessarily me. I thought that was really cool. That just came out of nowhere. Our ego doesn't take account for all the various structures. Our ego doesn't take account for all the various structures and functions of the human body and brain. When your ego is interpreting or perceiving something, it's not interpreting and perceiving how all of this stuff works, the function. It's just an opinion. It's like an automatic unconscious opinion. Nor does it take account for the virtual reality suit, our six senses that are always receiving and
Is there something
oh,
else I can help with?
there's my watch. That's proof that this is a live show. My watch just decided to. I must have said something that triggered the watch. Interesting. So our thought and idea of ourselves. It means that what I think and understand is a big act, but not necessarily really me. Our ego doesn't take account for all those functions and structures, nor does it take account for the virtual reality suit that's always perceiving and responding to stuff. Your ego does not take account for your interface response system. Your interface response system is happening all the time, and your ego just assumes things and it just starts labeling things. So our ego and personality only accounts for the opinion that we have for things. Why am I talking about that? Because the concept of ego death requires that you are aware of it, right? You'll never know that something's gone away if you don't recognize that it's there. So the goal with ego death, here we go. The goal with ego death is to become who we really are versus who we think we are. Think about that. What's the difference between who you really are and who you think you are? Well, you've been trained to think that you think you know who you are. So the goal is to really execute that. We are organisms functioning in terms with the whole environment instead of our personality. We are organisms and we're functioning and interpreting the entire environment rather than just our personality. If you can step away from your personality for a second and need to exhibit it, you're going to see the world just as it is. Ego death is not as difficult as you think. But if you try to get rid of your ego with your ego, the idea of trying to get rid of your ego would be impossible. It would take a lifetime. So it's very difficult. We can't make ourselves change, but we must. So how do we do this? We must hand over the direction and of nature and evolution. We must take the direction of evolution and nature and give it back to nature and evolution and stop trying to figure everything out. Are you ready and open to stop trying to know everything and stop trying to figure everything out? This could be really fun. This could be a really, really big breakthrough for you. So Alan Watts, one of my favorite, very, very mysterious alien-like guy, wrote a bunch of books, and you can look him up on YouTube as well. I'll put some of these things in the notes of this podcast. Alan Watts says that our ego and perception of our existence is just an idea based on a phony feeling. You laugh at Drew Neville. You like Alan Watts. Yeah, he is like an alien. So let me read that again. He says that our ego and perception of our existence is just an idea based on a phony feeling that we have. So what that is that we get this feeling, but it's phony, and we create this idea of our perceiving reality. So how do we experience ego death without dying? Remember the ego, the plant death, or the death plan is just about getting rid of your ego, but not actually dying. We must allow the version of ourselves that's not really us to die. That's what happened to me, or happened for me in the jungle. Start observing all that's going on in life without you. That's the first step, I think, is observe all that's going on in life without me. Because we have a tendency of thinking that we're involved in everything just because we're perceiving it. So your heart pumping, blood flowing, wind blowing, trees growing and swaying, right? That's the real you. Just, a non-controlling observer. Ego death has been referred to as the full collapse of the perceived meaning of life. That's what's scary about it is we're trying so hard to grab onto reality by thinking that we need to completely understand it. And we use things like religion and mathematics and science to try to interpret these things. But remember what I said, that is a far too simple way of perceiving things to execute. So it's the full collapse of the perceived meaning of life, which gives rise to the simple, true meaning of life, which is to go on day by day with the goal of simply going on. Is that okay with you? Eckhart Tolle refers to this collapse of everything that you know as a dark night of the soul. That's a video I'll put in the notes as well. A dark night of the soul, which is something that can trigger depression and an identity crisis, and that's why we're afraid of it. We're afraid of losing control of everything that we know. Yet, once we know this as the truth, then we can simply have fun without failure, right? This is a really fun way to go about your day to day. Once we establish the difference between what is and what we think, we can have fun creating our own illusion and narrative with no attachments to them being true. We can think and create our own reality and our own narrative, but detach from the need to say that they're true. They're just an illusion. Everything's an illusion. That's fun. So when I came out of my experience in the Amazon, I was transformed into this higher state of consciousness because I released from the need to know, right? One of the things that happened over there is I asked, when I was in this state and I was under the influence of the plant medicine, I said, show me the truth. And what's interesting is once I saw even a touch of the truth, I realized it was more than I can handle with my simple interface response system. So I said, no, thanks. So now in control of my made up narrative, right? Because I just make up my reality. And acknowledging that is really important. Once I discover a glitch in this made up reality, this is interesting. Once I discover a glitch in it, maybe something showing that it's not true, right? I just create a new one because I'm detached from the outcome. So now that my ego is dead, I no longer care that I am wrong because I no longer need to be right. There's your freedom right there. If you release from the need to be right and you just decide to be kind to others, right? Well, then it doesn't matter if you're wrong. So I'm just having some creative fun. That's what I say to myself. A deeper life experience that's created from concepts that we've been taught and trained. When I catch my brain attempting to explain something, what I do is I use my sound from my book. That's interesting. Catch it, right? There's my ego trying to explain things. See, we control the narratives that to make life more enjoyable. That's what we can do. If you want to have a more enjoyable life, just realize that you control the narratives. Yet understand that life, it's just life, and you are just you. So you go on with your good and your bad self today. Make sense? So I'll see you tomorrow at 7:30. It's wonderful to be in this new environment full of challenges and changes, but I'm here, and this is still happening, and we're going to move on to doing this with regularity, and I'll even do this when I get over to South Africa as well. But I love and appreciate you all. Hope that you will follow our podcast, share it with others, share our Rise Up with Dragon community. A lot of fun stuff coming through there. We're going to be working and finishing out some of our coursework when we're in South Africa. And remember, we have a newsletter that comes out once a week. You go to riseupadragon.com and it'll pop up and ask you for your email, and you'll get that. That's a free newsletter. So love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.